Good evening and welcome to the Florida House Book Club. My name is Mary Bebout and I am the current chair of the Florida House Book Club, representing Florida House on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Florida, as you all may know, is the only state in the nation with an embassy in Washington, D.C., and it's located right behind the United States Supreme Court. All visitors are served fresh orange juice and a cookie when you come visit. It's a ray of sunshine up there in the Capitol, and Florida House, we want you to know, is a non-profit, non-partisan organization with a mission to connect, celebrate, and champion Florida to the world. The Florida House Book Club does just that. Each year we feature 4 works of varying genres, either set in the Sunshine State or written by a distinguished author like our guest tonight. And our book club events are typically hosted in independent bookstores around the state, like the amazing Midtown Reader. We're here in Tallahassee. We have curated a remarkable reading list for books about Florida, and I'm going to hold up this little rat card. We have these here for those people who are here tonight. If you'd like one, Sally has a wonderful selection of Florida books. Many of the books that we have featured are in her Florida section at her wonderful new reading space here at Midtown Reader. And if you are visiting us online, you can go to our website, www.floridahousedc.org, and you can see all the books and some of the interviews we've had with authors in the past. Or better yet, stop by the house in Washington, D.C., pick up a wrap card, and get a glass of fresh orange juice. This time, Sally Bradshaw is going to welcome y'all to our book club.
Thank you, Mary. We're so glad y'all are here at Midtown Reader, and especially to be partnering with Florida House. Mary called me several years ago. She's always been a great customer, and Mary's quite a writer on her own. She's a graduate of the journalism school at the University of Missouri. That's a big deal. But she and I have been friends for a long time, and Mary said, what would you think about a book club with the Florida House? And I was thrilled, as someone who's been an advocate for this team of FSU creative writers, and we have major celebrities in the audience tonight, including our guest, our special guest, to say, yes, let's do it. And so we've started that process, and it's thrilling to be partnering with you tonight. So thanks for having us. And it's my special chance to introduce one of the first people I met with from the FSU School of Creative Writing, Robert Olen Butler, who is a legend and a star and is now a prolific writer and out with his latest book, Twice Run to Marriage. So we're thrilled that you were selected for this process tonight. He is a craft distinguished professor holding the Michael Shera Chair in Creative Writing at FSU. And what I'm particularly interested in, and I've never gotten to ask you about this in any level of detail, that you did something no other writer has ever done, revealed your writing process in full through a webcast, 17 two-hour sessions.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And that, I did that only 8 years after the World Wide Web came online, back in
2001.
Yeah, this is a quarter of a century ago.
You were ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Did you invent the internet? Anyway, it is really a delight to have you here. A Pulitzer winner, just a prolific writer, so many different types of wonderful books. We're so excited to have you here with the Florida House. And you are going to be in conversation tonight with Deanne Smith, and it's great to have you today in our bookstore. Deanne is a former trustee board chair of the Florida House, and I used to live and work in Washington, D.C., and I loved going to the Florida House. I had a little embassy on Capitol Hill and grabbing some orange juice and hanging out. So I appreciate your commitment to literacy in this book club, and welcome everybody to our new space. So thank you very much. Great to have you.
So it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce Tallahassee's own Pulitzer Prize winning author, Robert Olen Butler. We call him Bob, so we can all refer to him as that. Sally kind of went through all of your honors and distinguished things, so we'll just go right into the discussion tonight. And I think there are several people in our audience, both in person and live on Instagram, who might not be familiar with you or your work. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a writer?
So we've only got an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The short version.
Well, I I'm probably a writer because I started out as an actor. I went to Northwestern University back in 1963, which was the theater school. And a lot of my pedagogy grew out for the writing of for literary fiction, is the capacity for the writer to inhabit the character. In fact, a lot of what I learned about how to teach creative writing, which is somewhat different, as a couple of my students here will attest, from the normal and necessary teaching of craft and technique. I teach the process of creation, and it's rather like the difference between the craft and technique of an actor and the understanding of acting that came along with a guy named Konstantin Stanislavski of the early part of the 20th century, who at the Moscow Art Theater believed that actors must inhabit their characters and every line of dialogue needs to be assessed in terms of what the goals and objectives of that speech is, and that the outward performance is not something you technically are conscious of and willfully take on, but you inhabit the inner life of the character and their yearnings, as I would call it, and then let the outward performance flow from that. And so that, without going all the other steps, being going to Vietnam, where the Army teaching me to learn, and I learned fluently the Vietnamese language before I got there. And as far as this is concerned, I've been married 6 times, and so that was relevant along the way.
Yes, it must have helped in the story.
Yes. Every one I thought was going to last forever. So, that's some of the high and odd points for you.
Well, with all of the books you've written and short stories and some plays, I believe, have you honed in on one particular style of writing that interests you the most, or one storyline that interests you the most?
The one through line is literary, and the answer to this is going to be what makes a work literary, because actually I published 25 books of fiction, 19 novels, 6 books of short stories. And I've sat down one not long ago and actually divided them into substantial careers of 4 completely different writers on the surface. 9 of those novels was a writer with Robert Olen Butler of the relationships between men and women, as is Twice Around America. Then I wrote 6 novels as what everyone calls a Vietnam novelist, which is rather like calling Monet a lily pad. That's another thing, but that's a different writer. And then I also did wrote 4 books of historical espionage thrillers. And by the way, everybody put the word literary in front of each of these descriptions, okay? And then the 4th writer is a speculative fiction writer. I wrote a book set in hell. My most popular short story by a long shot, most taught, most anthologized, was a story called Jealous Husband Returns in Form of Parrot. In a book called Tabloid Dreams, with the stories where almost, many of you remember the Weekly World News, that vintage of newspapers at the grocery store checkout counters. I took those headlines seriously, and I wrote the real literary story behind each of those.
That's fun.
So anyway, you will find no through line in my work on that level that we usually identify. But down beneath, I go back to Aristotle. What is a plot? It's a character who has goals and objectives which are challenged and thwarted, and then he tries to go through those and around those thwartings and on toward, that's the narrative movement, toward the fulfillment of that objective or the failure. And I used the word earlier, yearning, because what makes something literary for me is that at the deepest level of a work that is literary, it could have any surface seeming genre, as long as down beneath, and every word, every character I've written in my 25 published books, the character at their deepest level, my characters yearn for a self, for an identity, for a place in the universe. And all of you who've read Twice Around the Marriage, just re-examine the book in regards to that. And you can examine every book I have ever written. And it is my contention that every serious literary work, at its deepest level, is about that. Why? Because that's what this is all about. That's what the books you read are all about. It's about what the gold chain and that beautiful top there, and it's about your bamboo shoots and your sneakers. And it's every choice we make, every sense detail in this room that is coming into our consciousness now, it's all chosen by and in pursuit of an ongoing sense of self. Who am I? Those are tiniest decisions, but all the major things, I could go on.
Okay.
That's the through line. That's the literary through line,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the answer to your question: the yearning for self.
Okay. So let's talk about Twice Around a Marriage. It's a surprising book, and it's about, have all of you read it? Okay, well, for some of you, and we're not going to spoil any of the plot lines, but
Or for them.
it's about a couple that traveled to Paris. They originally met in Paris in 1968 as college students. And when they arrived in Paris this time, in March of 2020, it's right when the pandemic hit. And we won't get in totally about why they were there, but they're attempting to maintain some emotional commitment to each other during the social distancing. But they're locked down and they're sealed up in a 600 square foot apartment for 3 weeks. So a couple questions that I have.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
You're being very careful about no spoilers, but I think it's germane to point
Okay,
out
all right.
that this couple, they were 72 years old, each of them. They were married for 22 years. They divorced. They were divorced, lived apart for 10 years. They married a second time. And now they have come to Paris because they're about to hit their 10th year marriage. And they have come back to the place where they met as students in order to try to decide, are we going to stay together unto death, or are we going to get the hell away from each other? That is at the heart of this. And as soon as they get there, Paris shuts down for COVID.
Correct.
So that much needs to be.
Okay. So one of the characters said, we're caught up in a plague-enforced retrospective of our lives.
Right.
All of it. It's just the full assessment of what our lives amount to. All of it. To me, that was the crux of the book. And it was hurtful, it was hopeful, and makes you really think about your life, think about your marriage or marriages. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing about relationships, all relationships and marriages, of course, are at the fundamental heart of how we engage with each other and live on this planet. But what is important and crucial and central to a relationship is that how your beloved, through their eyes, you see who you are. It is that same yearning always, the yearning for a self. You learn who you are by their gaze. And they are learning who they are by your gaze. And that is, or by their gaze. I got those mixed up. You know, we're looking at each other and we know. So that's at the heart of that. So the basic premise of this is, yes, what they're trying to figure out is their lives, all of their lives, but they're also, in that way, they're trying to find out who they are themselves.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Amanda and Howard. They're both writers, but they're different types of writers.
Yes,
So
they
do you
are.
want to tell us the
sure.
difference between the two?
Sure. You know, I swore long ago I'd never write a novel about a novelist. Seemed like a cheap way out, you know. But I violated it with this book, and she is a very prominent writer of literary fiction. In other words, she is a person of the body, of the senses, of emotions. He is a very prominent literary scholar of modernist fiction, which means he is a man of the mind, of an ongoing ideational approach to the larger issues and the larger forms and the larger techniques that are latent and inherent in the subject. In other words, she is a bird and he is an ornithologist. And that they love each other, but they also have always had a struggle, a difficulty in that seeing of each other, because they see the world in a kind of different place, you know.
But did you, to me, the jealousy between the two of them, and I'm not talking, there were two levels of jealousy that went on in this novel. One level was relationships and sexual partners and what your past was. But the bigger one that affected me was the professional jealousy that both of them had of each other. And I thought more so with Howard, that he was very proud of himself and what he's accomplished, but he was so jealous of his wife and what she could do. And he struggled to try to become a literary writer. And okay, so I won't elaborate, you elaborate.
Yes, well, I don't think it's quite as simple as jealousy. That's the manifestation of the different ways they see the world, and each of them felt that, she felt that to thrum to a work of literature is the ultimate experience of it. He is inclined toward that classic thing that students often hear in literature classes: what is the author trying to say? Hasn't said it yet, until we turn it into abstractions and ideas and themes and so forth. So, what we've missed is the step, which is what brings their differences into play here, is that since they're both literary shorts and they are trapped in a 600 square foot Airbnb, they decide to go back to the example of Boccaccio's The Decameron from the 14th century, where in fact it was even written contemporaneous to the bubonic, the Black Plague, which was going ravaging Europe. And what happened? A group of nobles, young nobles, go out into the countryside while this plague is passing through, and they tell each other stories, alternating nights. And so the two of them do too, Howard and Amanda, that they are going to write stories that are true it's like the autofiction or creative nonfiction. They will be stories, but they intend to deal with their lives as they actually live. And so they alternate nights, so that each of them has 48 hours to write their next story, and then read it.
Which they called Tales, which
Yes.
I found that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And how much they each struggled to tell the truth about that time, about how they felt, rather than a reaction to what the other one had written. And they would have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite to get down to that kernel of truth.
Right. And
Yeah.
Howard's always felt that he could do that. He could do that he could do the literary thing if he chose to do so.
Mhm.
And so he works toward that. And she has some very telling moments of reflection
Mhm.
and even literary analysis in her own work as a result of the larger context in which they're writing. So the ultimate reconciliation of the scholar and the ornithologist and the bird, that ultimate reconciliation is a kind of meaning for the reconciliation of the man of the mind and the woman of the heart, which is a reconciliation of the husband and wife in this marriage.
So which of those
Maybe
which
reconciliation.
of those writers resembles you the most? Because I think with the works that you've done and what you're doing professionally at FSU, you're in both ponds.
Well, yeah, I think the literary writer must be in both ponds. I mean, I inhabited them both. I was the essence of Amanda, and I was the essence of Howard when I wrote. I had to be. And it's that kind of, I'm the mockingbird in the situation.
So one of the things that somewhat bothered me in the book was their compulsive bickering.
Oh, well, yes.
And while
Well, I know.
yeah, but they both recognized it in themselves and tried to back out of it. But at the time, at different times, it just seemed so hurtful and intentional, and that was a little
You've not been
disturbing.
married very often, have you?
Still once.
You got lucky the first time. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, you can love and hurt and be hurt and be loved all at the same time. I mean, that's really, in essence, the human condition. Writ small, writ local.
We can see this book turning into a play. Have you contemplated that?
Well, I could see it turning into a Netflix series, actually. I mean, each tale,
Right.
there's 16 episodes here, with what goes on in between. She's the narrator of 8 stories. He's the narrator of 8 stories, and then there is a third person, omniscient narrator, putting the context to all of these things. And so, it's really made for Netflix.
Okay. All right.
Made for Netflix.
So all you people out there on Instagram, if you have any influence, Netflix it is, not Broadway. You also talked a bit about the inevitability of change, and clearly with COVID, there was so much of that had to happen, but also just throughout their lives as they matured, as their daughter matured, her relationship with her partner. Do you want to talk a little bit about the change, not only in the relationship, but in them?
You mean Howard and Amanda?
Yes, Howard.
Yeah, actually, they have a gay daughter
Mm-hmm.
who is in fact been with her husband, also a gay woman, who and they've been together almost a decade. And
Right.
their marriage ceremony is in the book. And actually, what the two of them have learned from each other is relevant to what Amanda and Howard are going through. And so all of that, gets mixed together. And I'm not sure that that answered your question, but
No, it does, and it just makes you realize as you read through the book and I read it the first time, and you formulate a lot of thoughts after you read something and emotions, and then I said, okay, now I'm going to read it the second time and see if I still feel the same way. And I did, which I even felt stronger in some elements of it, because some of the things like the compulsive bickering, that bothers me. And when I heard it the second time, it's like, this still really bothers me. they need to stop this. They get along a lot better if they stop.
Bothers you from their points of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not you as a reader, but you were concerned about what they were.
Yes, because I thought it was.
No, I know it's a tough book in that respect.
Yeah.
And so
Destructive.
right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't know what really where the book is going is hard to predict, and it could plausibly go in at least two directions.
Yes, and I will not tell you anything about the ending, but I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I really was. I had kind of gone down one path, and I appreciated the ending. You also talked about with the characters' marriage being harmonious, and Danny and her husband talked about whether or not you had to be harmonious on all levels, or if it could be 2 or 3 levels, or could a marriage work if you were only harmonious on one level? Do you want to?
She they do it better than I do and more, and so but yes, actually they're in the context there of the marriage, and that's a part of the book that's not done in the tales.
Right.
That's one of those the contextual life that's being led. Howard and Danny's husband have a very important conversation, because they are both, interestingly enough, they are of a kind.
Correct.
And as is Amanda and Howard and Amanda's daughter.
Right.
The wife in the gay marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a chance then for the next generation, in the way they try to work out what their implicit view of the world differences are, or view of the way the world needs to be explained or experienced, how they have reconciled those things, which is the wonderful thing about gay marriages is that they see all of the complexity of relationships afresh, and have built into those relationships parent disparities or break ground in ways that couples often aren't used to.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that in the book, again, without doing too much detail about it.
Right.
The 4 of them have very crucial interaction in the book. In extended scenes, a couple of scenes involving that marriage.
So I have 2 different excerpts that we would like you to read.
Okay, go.
I don't know which one you'd like to start with.
Tell me.
Okay, let's start here. This is, for those of you who have a book, it's on page 274. And if you go from about there to... Mm-hmm.
Okay, what?
As we dance.
Okay, who's dancing?
This is Danny and, I'm sorry, this is Amanda and Howard, and they're dancing at Danny's wedding reception.
Danny is
The daughter.
Their daughter. As we danced, without the fuller story of each other, my perception of him and my own past actions were the greater impediment to Danny's hope. But there was once something between Howard and me, something that had been worth a substantial number of years. Though I had not consciously sought such a reminder, I realized that what once connected us had persisted despite our sometimes tumultuous differences. A connection deeply rooted in our complex, shared devotion to literary creation. So complex that the tumult of it was as much personal as it was aesthetic. I thought, perhaps something in myself, even beyond the writer, had persistently wanted to be worthy of serious thought, and something in his self, beyond the scholar, had persistently wanted to live the feelings he analyzed. We each felt safest in our primary self, but we're conscious of our other. After all, that polarity comes together as it bears upon the great and eternal question that resides in all works of literature: who the hell am I? We'll go to this one now.
Yes.
And where would you want me to read?
You were starting, yes.
Okay. And we need a context.
Okay, so this is March 25th, 2020, and Amanda was up earlier, up all night, and she was talking about the retroactive jealousy.
Right.
Which
Okay. Let me
is
read
really
a little
interesting.
bit before that.
Sure.
Then. You know, a thing that can break out at the mere appearance of a hairdresser in a New Haven bar, or a bar girl working in Saigon. Those being two
Yes.
of Howard's stories. Events from times when Amanda had already vanished from his life, neither of which flirtations apparently went anywhere. Still the outbreak. She mulls on furiously, and now this is in her inner voice. Cauterize what? Some sort of retroactive jealousy. Mine. That was Howard's affliction. My equivalent was long ago, but good Lord, it's still with me. The story of 60 French girls singing. Now here I am, all these years later, getting jealous over possible long-lost lovers of Professor Howard Blevins, age 72, for Christ's sake. And surely, it sure as hell has to be about more than that. It's how these tales themselves are going, with the mortally grave state of the world outside our window. We're caught up in a plague-enforced retrospective of our lives, all of it coming at age 72. So maybe it's not quite jealousy. It's just the full assessment of what our lives amounted to. All of it. Not just with each other, but with all our others. This is what's weltering away in me now.
I just thought that was
Lovely.
incredibly powerful.
The 60 French girls, by the way, is a reference to one of the tales.
Yes, yes.
There was a song, I played the grooves off it when I was a kid, called 60 French Girls Can't Be Wrong. Anybody remember that album?
Yeah.
There was one kind of low on the top 50 chart, but it was 60 French girls, and they ranged from age like 12 to 20. And as a young, very young, adolescent young man, these 60 girls singing to me were, oh my goodness, in French, you know? And Howard had that same
Yes.
feeling. And Amanda was very jealous of all those 60 girls hearing that tale, so yeah.
And I was also curious, before we turn it over to Q&A, you've written books about Vietnam. You reference Vietnam in this novel. You were there for a year or 2 years? as
I
a
was
young
in
man?
Vietnam for 1 year.
And have you ever gone back? Have you spent significant time there?
Just May of last year,
Okay.
my beloved, recently passed wife, age 54, She and I spent a month there. And Vietnam, as I knew it, and I remember enough of my Vietnamese to try to hoo-ha's out of the Vietnamese. But they are absolutely without the most generous spirited and warm and welcoming and gracious people in the world. And they were then, they are now. I never got a sideways glance. Everyone was just, I mean, and interestingly, A Good Scent from a Strange Mountain, my Pulitzer book, which was about the Vietnamese community in Eastern Orleans Parish. Now, these are the people that ran away from the communists. Right. And that book, of course, was banned in Vietnam for 16 years. Mm-hmm. But back in 2009, believe it or not, the communist government not only allowed it to be translated into Vietnamese, the publishing house was the People's Public Security Publishing House in Hanoi. Wow. So the communist secret police published the English, the Vietnamese translation. Only one. I looked at it, it's wonderful. Only one story is missing, and it's the title story of the American Good Scent from a Strange Mountain, which is a story about one of those exiles having in his youth been part of the same kitchen in a French restaurant where Ho Chi Minh was the pastry chef, and that is the truth. And at that point, Ho Chi Minh absolutely assumed that America would understand his ambitions to make the Vietnamese people free of French autocratic rule, and we never understood them. Remember the domino theory? That once Vietnam fell, that would knock over the next domino. Right. I mean, China would then control Vietnam, and then the dominoes all through Southeast Asia fell. 1975, the communists won. Within a year, the first war that the Vietnamese fought was with Chinese over their border. And the second war they fought was they marched into Cambodia and threw out a communist dictator there. So we never understood these people. Never. And everybody in this room right now, I would bet that all but maybe one or two of you, but virtually all of you, are wearing a piece of clothing made in Vietnam. Right. You know, we wear the Vietnamese on our bodies every day. And you go back to Vietnam, I'll tell you, it's the most beautiful country, and they are the sweetest, most welcoming people in the world. You go there, and they will treat you as if you were their deepest, best friends instantly.
And having grown up during that time period, my father was in the military. He went to Vietnam. Reading Good Scent from a Strange Mountain was very impactful to me. And just my dad loved the Vietnamese people. Yeah. He felt very comfortable in South Vietnam, and he wasn't there by choice. It was a war, but he always admired the people. And over the years, I've gotten to know Vietnamese families here who are just such amazing success stories. And from them fleeing, ending up in the camps, getting moved over here into just all these different communities, particularly a lot of Catholic communities, who the Catholic Church was very instrumental in moving families around and getting them jobs and education. So I've appreciated that part of your writing very much.
And by the way, all the churches are back open in Vietnam.
Really?
The Catholic churches.
So let's move to some questions and answers. Do we have some people? We have some of Bob's students here who may want to ask some questions of him. They've got him on a different level now.
This all sounded very familiar to my students.
Oh, did it really? Yeah. They've heard all this. Okay, so we can come up with anything you need. But would any of you all like to ask some questions?
Yeah, I love the discussion. First of all, we've been talking about Vietnam and French connections and everything, but would you have imagined this novel maybe taking place somewhere else, or where is another environment maybe in this pandemic setting that you could have seen these two working out their problems?
Yeah, the question, since you don't have the microphone, is that where else might this have taken place? This happened in Paris. It absolutely could have. I mean, the differences between them would travel to any country. I just happen to know Paris very well, and it felt natural for them to be there. But no, I'm so bold as to say that the book and the relationships are universal. I mean, I think human beings are like this, and it's not just men and women. Those two roles could be reversed. There are very emotional men and very, analytical and thoughtful women. And the fact is that even as soon as I say that, I develop a prefab identity, and that's the problem with yearning for self. All the problems in the world, race, religion, ethnicity, nationality, wealth, religion, all these, everything. What are all those things? They're simply prefabricated answers to that question, who the hell am I? The problem is that if you grab one of those, because the real search for self, the literary writer believes that there are 8 billion different answers for that question, who am I, on this planet. That the combinations and the nuances and the originalities that are involved in human life and human souls is so great that it's going to take, literary fiction forever to explore all, just a fraction of the possibilities, the more interesting ones. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is and that's true, so it could go to any country. Mm-hmm. But of course, the problem with the prefabs, they are very comforting because because the real answer, you're going to keep pursuing it, and it's going to keep shape-shifting on you, and you're never going to really be able to answer it, fully, and not with this person, no, that didn't work, and you're looking for a pair of eyes that can see you, and you'll recognize yourself there, and that's not happening. I mean, all of that goes on. It's scary as hell. But if you got a prefab, it's easy. Oh, I'm white. And if I'm white, then there's that box around me. And what's this corollary to that? Outside the box, people of different colors. And then it's so easy, aren't we all seeing how it is to then go, these are my own. The people in this box with me, those are my own, and that's the other. And the fact that they are other makes me even more conscious of this identity that I have taken on and am clinging to as the full answer. And even then, wow, wouldn't it be great if the self that I am is really the better self, And so that box gives you that impression as well. And put any color, put any religion, put any social belief, any politics, anything in that box, and you're going to have the same, profound spiritual problem with the limit you have chosen, the prefab. So that's the answer. Is that, yeah, every country, every situation.
So I have a question. Can you tell us about the books you've written that are set in Florida?
The most famous one is Perfume River.
Okay.
And that takes place, it starts at the co-op. The co-op, it's still open, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not what it was.
I got a little old.
Yeah. But that's the book I'd recommend to you about Tallahassee. And the book I've just finished, by the way, which is not just beginning to try to find a place. Don't get me off in the current state of American publishing, please.
Do you have a title?
Citizen Parrot. Remember that short story?
Yes, about parent.
Well, spoiler alert, but at the end of that story, which was in the New Yorker 32 years ago, at the end of the story, he thinks he's about to commit suicide. He can't take it anymore. That his wife, he watches all his wife's lovers go in, and so he's about to throw himself against the glass door. She has accidentally left his cage door open. He's going to throw himself against the glass door down there at the end of his den until he just fractures his little fragile bird skull. But it took me over 30 years to realize she left the door open. So I have advanced the timing of this story. It didn't take much to 5 days before the 2024 presidential election, and he flies out the door into a picaresque novel of encounter with person and situation after person after situation, starting in Tallahassee, but then moving up to Thomasville and into central Georgia. And so that's another Florida book that's we hope we'll find a good publisher.
So tell us a little bit about your students and
They are fabulous, these two.
have they published any works as of yet, or
Not yet.
still working on it?
But, yeah, they're in my graduate workshop right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great. And you said you teach one workshop a semester?
Huh?
One workshop a semester, is that correct?
I teach one workshop a semester, the graduates in the fall and the advanced undergraduates in the spring.
That must be so interesting. Do you all have any questions of him, things you want to find out? Inner truths?
We've asked them all.
Oh, no, there's another. Hey, Kyle,
There we go. Every week.
That's another. And there's another. They slip in like, and there's one. So, well, we got a workshop going here.
I wanted to gently push back against the both of the characters. You said like they both come from you, and you do write from that that mental compost heap where everything is just mined from your past. But I guess to phrase the question in a different way, did one of the characters over another come easier to write?
If either of them came easier, it would have been Amanda, ironically enough. And that's the other thing. The things that the world at large thinks you do not have as a literary writer, even the right to write from. It's not based on those prefabs. I wrote in the voices of Vietnamese men and women, and by the way, amongst the generous minds as well as hearts of the Vietnamese, I've never had any pushback on that. And in fact, many current publishing Vietnamese writers that I've met around the country and in Vietnam, even said it was an inspiration to see that done 25 years ago. And they encouraged them to find their voices. But I grew up as an only child with a mother and father who loved each other dearly, but who argued furiously virtually every day and night. But they refused to let the sun go down without telling each other and me how much we loved each other. And I would tell you that it is a harder leap of imagination for me to write in the voice. Let me put it the other way around. It would be not as difficult for me to write in the voice of an African American, a black young man, who was an only child and lived in a house where the word love was always shared. That would be less difficult for me than to write in the voice of a young white man who lived in a large family with many brothers and sisters, and the word love was never mentioned. In terms of the leap of imagination, you know, now obviously it's not sufficient. You have to know a lot about. I wouldn't have written in the voices of Vietnamese if I hadn't spoken the language fluently. Spent almost every night in Saigon. I spent 7 months working in Saigon at Saigon City Hall, and spending every night after midnight wandering the steamy back alleys of Saigon where nobody ever seemed to sleep. And I just crouched in the doorways with people. And we spoke their language, and they were enchanted by that. And they let me into their homes and into their culture and into their lives. I mean, I had to do that too, you know. They nearly married a Vietnamese woman. They brought her home, but that, you know, just there are, you know, there are other things as well. But it's not the simple matter of. So yeah, Amanda was easier to write because I'm closer to her center of view, of consciousness.
I have another question. So, in the book, you sort of talk about Amanda's writing style and her little quirks, and then Howard's. And your students probably know yours, but can you share with us your writing style?
My writing
And
style.
your little writing techniques, or?
Well, I've kind of hinted at the answer earlier. It's the matter of, like an actor, you inhabit a character. And if you've got a good ear for voices, you can, part of the inhabiting involves being able to channel the voice. In fact, when you get into the zone of writing, right, you know, you feel like you're channeling what's coming out of you onto your screen, and it's just being part of being inside the other.
I think I asked the question wrong.
Okay.
So, do you write at midnight? Do you write in the morning?
I see, that kind of thing. First thing in the morning.
Different. One wanted quiet, one wanted noise, you know.
No, I certainly write first thing in the morning for as long as I need to feel like I've been there sufficiently. It's at least 3 or 4 or 5 hours, probably 2. And I may go back afterwards. There are many books where, in fact, usually, I will find it takes some serious searching, appropriate music to play. It always instrumental, but I often will use, at least I'll play it a while and then turn it off and then may go back. But there are kind of soundtracks for myself. Usually, well, of all sorts, from jazz to.
The 60 French Girls.
I'd stop writing and just start doing my band. Yeah.
Along those lines, what's your favorite way to write? Is it dictating, longhand, or typing? Or
no, my first novels, I was before Laptops. I had a drafting pencil and legal pads on a masonite lapboard, and I wrote them on my lap on the Long Island Railroad, commuting from Seacliff, Long Island, into New York City, down into Greenwich Village, where I worked as the editor-in-chief of a business newspaper for a decade. And that was, and I felt like there was a bond, to the hand and that there's a thing psychologists used to call functional fixedness, that if there's a certain thing you do at a certain time in a certain place and with certain materials, that all you have to do is be in that place and engage those objects, and you're in the zone of doing that thing. And that's called functional fixedness. And so after I published enough books, I got my PhD from the University of Knopf, meaning, I published well enough that I could get a teaching job. And I did the university in southern Louisiana, fortuitously enough, in Lake Charles, Louisiana, McNeese State University. And I swear, for months, several months, when I got my writing room and now there are computers, at my computer, I thought I would have to get a little electric motor and have it jiggle my chair in order to write, yes. And hire somebody to flip their newspapers around and curse at each other for playing the wrong bridge bid, and that was all part of the functional fixedness. But I adjusted to that. Yeah. Now it's, of course, I'm a big computer. As I say, one of the first things I did when I came here, fall of 2001, I did that inside creative writing thing, which for 17 days, 17 evenings, 2 hours a night, I went from choosing the initial inspiration for a short story to the final polished draft. You see every lousy, rotten sentence go up, and all the tweaking, and all the, and I was really kind of schizophrenic during that time. I'd be in my zone writing, and then I'd do something, and I realized, pardon me, well, that would be useful to explicate. And I'd stop, and they had 2 cameras. You can watch all this. Go to robertolenbutler.com, and it's right there on the homepage, Inside Creative Writing. And, that, what question did I do? Did I mention Graham Greene yet? Yeah, how do I write?
Right.
Boy, this way. Let's try this again. How do you write? Like this. That's it.
Do we have another?
Yes, there was another one.
Yes, so if you were the casting director for the Netflix version, do you have any actors in mind for Howard and Amanda, or even the cowboy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the cowboy. Wow, I don't. I see myself in all the roles.
Where did the idea for this book, where did it come from? And then earlier you spoke about, from a reader's perspective, what is the author trying to tell us? What are you trying to tell us in this book?
Oh boy. And I say this with all due respect, and all the students in the room will know what I'm about to say. That nothing comes from an idea, and I'm not trying to tell you anything, except I'm trying to render through the inhabiting of real characters who yearn, as we all do, for a self and an identity, and challenged by that. And I inhabit them and let them, and the object I'm creating is of the senses and of the moment, of scene and of emotion, and ultimately the meaning you get from it is when you read, you're intended to thrum to it. You thrum to the way in which the highly selective, coherent, organically combined, living entity of that narrative will make you thrum like a string on a string instrument. And that's ultimately the primary meaning that comes out of a work of art. All that comes after that, absolutely legitimate. All the the wonderful ideas that can be derived from that are wonderful only in the same way that they are that those ideas and so forth can be derived from the Schoenberg symphony of life, you know. But for me, it's just the creating and then experiencing sentence to sentence the throne.
You have to be walking down the hall of the Williams building, past Bob's office, when a student is sitting there, and hear that student say, "I have an idea." You hear Bob say, "Oh, no, you don't."
I said it more gently to you. You could come take my course next spring, and I will say it in somewhat other terms to you.
With that, unfortunately, it's time for us to start closing, and we want to thank all of you for being here. We want to thank all of our Instagram Live people for being here. Thank you for supporting Florida House on Capitol Hill and our book club. Thank you, Midtown Reader, Sally, if you're back there. And thank you, Robert Olen Butler, Bob. This was a delight to have you here. Just an amazing experience, and I hope that many of our Instagram Live people will be able to purchase your book. And if you have not purchased books here, we have them for sale, and I believe Bob is going to sign some of them. And just to remind you, our 2026 Florida House Book Club information will be coming out. We also have rack cards here that we can share with you for the 2021 through 2025 books that we've read, and many of them are here for sale as well. So with that, thank you so much. It was a delight.